Finally, it's prediction time in the NFL on the OFN today. Our Lads Football Network, a Thursday. It's the last Thursday of August, and we're we are 1 week away from kickoff. Thursday night football, which is, what is that? Is that, Ryan, is that still like theoretically Sunday night football? Is that what they call it? Part of the Sunday night football package or something like that?
Yeah, it's on NBC, but they call it the opening game or something like that. So
Yeah.
whatever, it'll be your Sunday broadcasters on NBC. No one really cares. It's a football game that counts.
That's right. And who would have thought this time last year that nobody would have guessed who the Chiefs, if they win the Super Bowl, who are they going to play in that first game? You could have had 20 guesses, 25 guesses maybe. But that's an interesting topic in and itself. Ryan Dunleavy, as you can tell, joining us from the New York Post, covers the NFL as well as, of course, the local teams, New York Giants, New York Jets. How's it going, Ryan?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Very good.
Mark, just perfect. Thank you, Ryan. Ryan, let me ask you a question. Greg says you cover both New York teams. You have a bias toward either team? I know you have to stay down the middle, but when you're watching games, who are you pulling for more than the other?
Neither.
Right, there you go. That was the answer.
Pull for the story. Root for the better story. That's
there you go.
You root for the better story. I saw both teams probably 10 times each this summer, so I'm sure we'll get into it. But I would say it. After a long and miserable baseball season, New Jersey's Inns and New Yorkers have plenty to look forward to in football season.
I'm sure they do.
All right, so we are going to do what you expect us to do, and that is preview the season, give predictions. We're going to go over the futures, Super Bowl futures. We could throw out some other futures if we have time. We're going to have sleepers to make the playoffs and of course, also win the Super Bowl. We'll pop this on the screen every once in a while. As you can see, this is DraftKings. So this is the DraftKings. These are the odds. Matter of fact, I am going to make it pretty simple. So even you guys can... Oh, wait. No, I don't want to do that, do I? There you go. So you guys can also... check that out as we talk. Okay, so let's start in the AFC, and let's start in the AFC East, which could be the toughest division in football. Ryan, you cover the Jets, so this is a big division for you. And taking a look at your predictions, you're all in on the New York Jets winning the AFC East this year.
I have the Jets winning the AFC East. I have Aaron Rodgers winning the MVP.
Oh!
I am all in on the Jets. So look.
And by the way, I have to preface, this is important because if anybody has never watched our show before or watched Ryan is the farthest thing from a Jets homer or somebody that is going to side on the Jets.
Yes, any kind of New York homer. The furthest thing. Last year I picked the Giants to win 4 games, and I think I picked the Jets to win 5. So, the running joke on around the Giants is that whatever the lowest pick is for anybody, I'll go lower than that. So,
right.
I've done 6 years of this, and I've never seen anything in practice quite like I did with Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. I mean, he is putting the ball in tight cover. Guys are draped on receivers, and he just puts it on top of the defender's helmet. So you just have to reach up and grab it off the guy's helmet. I mean, the accuracy's there, the leadership, the buy-in, it's all there. I think you need 4 things in today's NFL to win a Super Bowl. You need a great quarterback. You need a great defensive line. You need a great secondary, and you need a great offensive line. I think those are the 4 things that matter the most. The Jets have maybe the second best or first best at 3 of those spots. The defensive line's the best. The quarterback's not Patrick Mahomes. He's as good as anybody else. And the secondary might be the best. The offensive line is the whole season. If it's average, they'll be in Super Bowl contention. If it's abysmal, they'll blow up the whole season.
Yeah. And that starts with making sure Dwayne Brown stays healthy, first of all. That's the thing. I mean, because if Dwayne Brown
And
is healthy and the offensive line is generally healthy, then they're going to be fine.
Yeah, Becton and Brown, two guys, one old, one young, both injury plagued. Your two tackles, huge injury concerns. The backup tackles, the guys who played most of the first team reps all summer were Billy Turner and Max Mitchell, and they did not perform well. So the idea of both of them playing is terrifying. The idea of one of them playing is worrisome.
What do you think about that analysis, Mark?
Well, I can't argue with the analysis at all. I think he's spot on, especially his check boxes of what it takes to win a Super Bowl. My only concern about the Jets is the fact that they are very, very hyped this year. Very, very popular public team. There's a couple of those guys I'll be fading this year, if for no other reason, because the public is all over them. They may be the most popular public team out of the AFC, but there's a lot to overcome there, as Ryan mentioned here, with the talent that's on hand. And I agree with Ryan. I've never seen a more accurate passer in my life than Aaron Rodgers has been throughout his National Football League career. And it's nice to see him rejuvenated, recharged again. I don't know if it was the mushrooms or the trade, but he's looking awfully good.
Yeah.
Whatever fantasy show you do, whatever fantasy drafts you have, get Garrett Wilson. He is going to, at the end of the season, you will talk about him like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Garrett Wilson. That's how you will rank the receivers.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
When you look at receivers like Devontae Adams, Hopkins, and we can go down the line, and of course Wilson, we know how talented they are, but what gets them over the top statistically are the great quarterbacks. Those are the ones that put them from being, hey, yeah, they had a really good all-pro season, they had a really good Pro Bowl season, they put up some good numbers, 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns. But it's the Aaron Rodgers and Mahomes, those guys that get them to go 15 touchdowns and 1,500 yards, and that's exactly what Ryan's saying. So,
and look, we just spent a lot of time here on the Jets. I like the Bills. The Dolphins I'd be more sure of if I knew Tua could play 17 games. And I don't think the Pats are very good. I think the Pats. All of a sudden, we have Bill Belichick talking about how hard it is to sustain excellence, and that's why. Who did he point out the other day was falling back to the pack? The Rams. And whatever he said the other day, it sounded like excuse making. It's like, well, when you had Tom Brady, you didn't have to worry about sustaining excellence. So now that it's on you, how about you figure it out? So no, I'm not a fan of the Pats this year. I'm fading the Pats. I think the Dolphins, it rides on Tua, and I think the Bills are due for some natural regression. They don't have the hype they did last year. The Josh Allen Diggs thing worries me a little bit. Von Miller being sidelined. I think they're due for a slow start. They'll be there at the end, but I think they're due for a slow start where they have to make up some ground.
Pats with a losing record since Tom Brady's been gone, that's just about says it all for Bill Belichick, and I concur. I think they are the cellar dweller in the AFC East.
Yeah, Mark is the only one to pick 3 teams from the East, but this is nitpicking because, in my mind, because the AFC is so tough that Miami getting there, if you don't pick Miami, and I know neither of us picked Miami, Ryan, but to me, I think they're every bit as good as any team outside, say, the elite teams. They're definitely up there. And like you said, though, we don't know if Tua is going to stay healthy, because if somebody tells me Tua is going to stay healthy for 15 or 16 games, I'm saying, yeah, they're either making the playoffs or they're not making it on the final week. I mean, they're just they have enough talent and good coaching that I don't see injuries. And that's the thing about the NFL every year, as we say this every year, injuries, the schedule, the luck of the bounce, the call, and especially in the AFC this year is going to determine 3 or 4 teams making it or not.
We'll see a 10-win team in the AFC that doesn't make the playoffs. To me, that's the Dolphins.
And I would agree, because I don't have them in, and I could see them doing exactly that. So it's not a knock on them. It's just that I think it's going to be hard for 3 teams to make it from the East. It could happen. I think it was a little easier to happen in the NFC because the NFC is weaker. But it could happen. AFC North is tougher. We could talk about them just in a second. But as far as Buffalo, we all have Buffalo, of course, making it. Mark, you have Buffalo a little bit better ranked than we do. So you're still high on Buffalo as a top Super Bowl contender.
I am high on the Buffalo Bills this year. Yes, I am. It's been 2 AFC championship losses in a row. Those losses came against Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow. I think it's Allen's turn this football season here. They're really hungry this football season here. All the hype, as I mentioned here, is on Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes in the AFC, along with, obviously, what's going on with the New York Jets right now with Aaron Rodgers. But I do have Buffalo. They've been there. They've done that. I feel it's their turn this year.
And you have them to play or win the Super Bowl?
I have them to do both, to play and to win the Super Bowl.
Whoa! 1993 is back.
There we go. Look out. It's what is it? How many did they lose in a row, Buffalo? Is it 4, Ryan, or 5? 4. 0 for 4. So there we go. We're going to call the streak to end this year with the Buffalo.
I hope you don't have them playing the Eagles, because that'll don't spoil it for me, Mark. But if you have them playing the Eagles, that'll complete the quadruple, right? They lost Super Bowls to the Giants, the Commanders, the Cowboys twice. So if you have them losing to the Eagles, or you have them playing the Eagles, then they're going to lose, and that'll be 0-4 against the NFC East.
Well, that's the reason they lost. And you made out a good point. There was the NFC East every time they were there.
I'm saying. So if you have them playing the Eagles, they're in trouble.
I do not. No, I do not.
All right. And now let's talk about the North, because the North is, now they may not have upper echelon, say, ability that the East has, but they're close. And from 1 to 4, I mean, this is going to be a really tough division now, because Pittsburgh is going to be even better. I mean, Tomlin can't coach a losing team, and he had a rookie quarterback in Trubisky for a few games and still found a way, even though they didn't make the postseason. So I feel they're just going to be better. And then you got Baltimore; they're so well coached, as well as Pittsburgh. And then you've got the Bengals, and then the other team that we, of course, have to concern yourself with in the division is who? I said everybody, didn't I?
The Browns.
The Cleveland Browns.
Well, yeah, the Browns, because the Browns have talent. And you take a look at the roster, and offensively and defensively, they've done a very good job, and that's why they went out and they mortgaged the house on Watson. They knew that they had the talent. They had to do whatever they could to get that quarterback, to get them over the top. But nobody knows what to expect from Deshaun Watson this season, Ryan. Nobody knows if he just needed to kind of get his feet wet last year, get the rust out, and now he's with the team. He's the man. He starts week 1, and he's going to go back to being the guy he was a few years ago.
I reached out to a couple coaches a couple weeks ago and asked them for surprise teams in the NFL, and I got probably
a lot of Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, I would. The most of any AFC team was the Cleveland Browns. There were probably more on the NFC, because it's easier to pick a surprise team in the NFC, because there's only 2 good teams in the NFC. So yeah, I would say I got, for the AFC, the Browns are probably the most popular choice. And it's wild because, like you said, they could be really good. They have a lot of talent, or it could all just get really ugly. Stefanski could get fired. Watson could show that, he's that 2 years off he's still not the same. I got a lot of mixed reviews on that team. People are saying they could win anywhere from like 11 to 5 games. And the people who are optimistic, honestly, it's not even Deshaun Watson they're coming back with. It's the impact of Jim Schwartz as defensive coordinator.
That's exactly right. I think that's the biggest addition the Browns made in the offseason. They made a lot of great defensive help pickups along the way. They shored up their defensive line, their defensive backfield. But it's a Jim Schwartz defense, and the players are loving it. Everything I'm hearing about Jim Schwartz, they love playing for the guy because he lets them go. He lets them play their game. So if the defense comes around for the Browns, a lot of talent on this offense here. We all know about Nick Chubb and everything that he can do. Just fantastic that way. Deshaun Watson, the big question mark for the Cleveland Browns here. But I have a really, really good feeling there's too much talent on this football team for them to be held back here again this year. he spent a lot of money signing Deshaun Watson. The Browns owner did, and I feel this is going to pay off for him this particular football season. I'm all in on the Cleveland Browns as well.
Yeah, you would think they're going to be just fine offensively again, unless there's just something not right with Watson. Throw in the Elijah Moore deal, which now that he's in a new non-New York location, he's got all the talent in the world, and he could just blow up this year with Watson. And like you said, it's that defense. It's still a very good defense. The question I think though is still is there enough playmakers on defense outside of Myles Garrett? I
So
mean,
they added the two Vikings guys,
yeah,
Zadarius Smith and Dalvin Tomlinson. I know Dalvin Tomlinson from Giants days. Not a playmaker. He's a good player.
yep,
He's not a forced fumble sacks guy. He's just
A good, solid player. Yes.
yeah, good solid player. Zadarius Smith has playmaking ability. Myles
yep.
Garrett, defensive player of the year candidate. You wonder how the secondary is going to hold up.
Well, Denzel Ward was an all-pro bowler 2 years ago. He had a really off season last year. If he comes back to that form, that would be really, really helpful. And in the draft the last 2 or 3 years, they've really concentrated on shoring up that secondary. And if it comes to fruition this year, the players that they drafted, if they can step up, I think the defense can also circle back. Let me throw this out here, guys, while we're on this division here. This division is so tough. Maybe not as good as the AFC East from a potency standpoint, but I think from top to bottom, there's not a real weakness in the division. Maybe you can call the Patriots the weakness in the AFC East, but I don't see a certified cellar dweller in this particular division. Everybody's got the Pittsburgh Steelers as a rebound team this year, but it means somebody's going to have to take a step backwards. And my concern with Pittsburgh is this: they're all in on Kenny Pickett. Well, if you look at Kenny Pickett's numbers from last year, they were not that good, okay? Maybe it's because they rebounded and they ended up having a winning season. But I think he had 7 touchdown passes and 9 picks for the year. He played some pretty good ball in the preseason here this year. But they were the least injured team in the National Football League last year were the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think the offensive line started the same 5 starters all 17 weeks of the season.
Wow.
Does that happen 2 years in a row to a football team? It did last year, but it didn't get them anything. So we'll see whether or not Pittsburgh ends up being the cellar dweller inside this division.
Pickett was the breakout player of the preseason. I thought he was fantastic in the preseason. I don't know that anybody was better and any team at any position than Kenny Pickett was in the preseason. And they did something that they don't usually do, the Steelers. They spent in free agency. They added some guys in free agency. They obviously felt some urgency because they went outside their draft and developed status a little bit more than usual. I have them in last place in the division. I still think it's a 2-team race. As much time as we spent on the Browns and the Steelers, I still think it's a 2-team race here, guys. I think it's a Bengals-Ravens division again. Their head-to-head matchups will decide it. Very thin. I mean, the Ravens, what they did, Lamar Jackson has his third best weapon this year is probably better than any weapon he's had any other year. They finally went all in. They gave him the contract. They got Beckham. They drafted – which one did they draft? They drafted
Flowers.
They drafted Zay Flowers. All those 4 receivers who went back to back to back gets caught in my head. They drafted Flowers. Obviously, Andrews is still there. They have a 4 running back system. New offensive coordinator. I think they're good. And then the Bengals are kind of in that position the Bills are, where it's like, okay, yeah, obviously they're really great. Let's talk about something else. But no, they have – it's probably the last year together for Jamar Chase, Higgins, and Boyd as a threesome. Probably their last year together as those 3. Mixon's still there. Orlando Brown on the offensive line. They're like the Bills. It's Super Bowl or bust. And I think now that we know Burrow's back on the practice field, everyone can breathe a sigh of relief. They're my pick to win this division. Well,
one of the things that really excites me about Cincinnati, all the talent that you have that you mentioned here, is I really love their defensive coordinator, Lou Anarumo. The players love him as well, and he was rumored to be possibly a head coach this football season. It didn't happen. So maybe it'll happen next year. So he could also be leaving the pack, if you will, if these star players end up they can't match their salaries and they have to let some of them go. They're that way. The other side of the coin is the Baltimore Ravens, this football team this year. A little bit strange what happened in the preseason. Not that preseason really matters all that much, but John Harbaugh had that terrific winning streak in the preseason
Yeah.
snapped this year. And the thing that I have to scratch my head, Ryan, is normally he plays a lot of his starters all preseason long because he wants to establish that winning attitude. Well, he went with Josh Johnson most of the preseason here, and he didn't even seem to want to care to win the football game. It was really rather strange to me to see that happen. But last year, the Baltimore Ravens, when they went up against teams with the winning record, they were only 2-6. And my main concern with them this year is they're going to play 12 games against teams that won or that have a season win total this year, I should say, of 8.5 or higher. So Baltimore's going to have to step up to the table and knock off some good football teams if they want to prove that they're a contender.
Good stat.
You have Cincinnati as your top seed, don't you, Ryan?
I do.
And then you have Baltimore making it. And
I do. I have both of them in the playoffs. Cleveland not in the playoffs, and the Steelers in last, but a good last.
Yeah, I mean, and just to show you how tough it is, we completely disagree on everything in this division. Mark, you have Cincinnati and Cleveland. Ryan has Cincinnati and Baltimore. I have Cincinnati and Pittsburgh.
Wow.
Well, Cincinnati gets the vote. They win the nomination.
Yeah.
They win the vote for presidency. They'll be the president of that particular division this year. It's a question of who's going to be the vice president. What other teams are going to make this playoffs? And you can make cases like we just argued, guys, about any of the other three teams. That's how deep
absolutely.
This
That's it's just going to be so tough. So. Yep. Matter of fact, the Steelers are if you're talking about, here's an interesting thing. 2 of our 3 Super Bowl sleepers, we all get 1 Super Bowl sleeper, and that's a team that's at least, what did we say, 30-1 or higher, something like that?
Yes.
And 2 of our picks are in this division, 2 out of the 3. Mine is Pittsburgh, Mark's is Cleveland. So it's not from the AFC East, but then again, that would be a sleeper. And then the odds, just to show you the difference in the odds, Pittsburgh, they are the long shot, as well as I guess they should be. 50-1 to win the Super Bowl. Cleveland being, pretty respectable 35-1, considering they're the third choice in the division. So, in the South, it's completely different in both the AFC and the NFC. This is where you're more than likely going to have one team from each division, the South and the AFC, South and the NFC. Ryan, this is unlike the last division. This is something I don't think anybody's going to disagree with. I mean, I'd like to know who is picking anyone but Jacksonville to win the AFC South, and maybe you can answer that. If something happens, Trevor Lawrence gets hurt, something goes weird with Jacksonville, who is your pick? Who's your sleeper pick in the South?
This is crazy, but I actually really like the Texans. I like what they did in the offseason. I like the moves they made, not just in the draft, getting Will Anderson and CJ Stroud. I thought CJ Stroud looked sharp in the preseason. If he can be protected, I think he can be a rookie who can have some success. Like I said, they were aggressive in free agency. I thought they made some good moves. They didn't do anything stupid like they usually do or overpay anybody. They just got good, solid players. They're starting to build a core. It's taken a long time, right? Nick Caserio has been there 25 years. So it's taken a long time to turn the page on the Deshaun Watson mess, but I think they've finally done it. I think it's Jacksonville leaps and bounds, but like you said, if Trevor Lawrence somehow tears his ACL in week 1, who could steal the division? It would be a 7 or 8 win team, and I think it would be the Texans.
Well, I'm going to trump that a little bit or raise the stakes a little bit there. I'm not all in on Jacksonville this football season here, and everybody's buying or drinking the Kool-Aid with what they saw last year, and it has been Trevor Lawrence's time. He's terrifically talented, and he really stepped up to the table last year. The biggest knock I have against the football team is real simple. one of the biggest letdown angles that I find in the National Football League are for teams that in 1 year won more games than they did in their previous 2 years combined. That's exactly what Jacksonville did this football season here with the big season they had last year. And there's also another team in the NFC that's in that same role, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles. In fact, there's three teams in the NFC. Usually, you only find one team that fits this bill every year. Now we've got three of them this year. You've got Jacksonville, you've got Philadelphia, and you've got the Detroit Lions. All three very, very popular public teams. Watch those three football teams that I just mentioned and see if two of them, at least two of them, don't take a step backwards.
Do you have a stat on that, Mark? I'm writing a story for the Post. I'm going to interject here with a little behind the scenes. I'm actually writing a story for the Post on teams that win 5 or less games 1 year.
Okay.
And then jump their win total by at least 5 wins the next. So 1 to 5, 1 to 6, 2 to 7, 3 to 8. So
Right.
teams that won 5 or less 1 year and then have a jump of 5 wins. So they're essentially what we would call ahead of schedule in a rebuild. They don't take steps. They go from bad to good with
Quantum
nothing.
leaps. Right. Right.
And that's the Giants, the Jaguars, and the Lions. Those are the 3 teams that applies to. Your stat, your
My cousins. Yeah.
your trend right there on the teams that win more than they did the 2 years combined sounds very similar to what I'm working on. You have a stat on that or no?
Well, I do, and what I'll do is I'll make sure I get it to you by the end of the day. It's in my database.
There you go.
You know,
There you go. A little teamwork happening on the OFN.
Now, if you want me to, while we're visiting here, I can bring it up right now, Ryan, and pass it along to you. So let me fire.
I mean, you could just email it to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's fine. And you'll be surprised at how much of a big step these teams take backwards. The only team that defied that was the Cincinnati Bengals, and that was when Joe Burrow really came around. But before Cincinnati Bengals did just that, and I believe it was last year. Look at Cincinnati the year before. That I think that they won 11 games, and the 2 years before that they were really horrible. So the only team that, like I say, was an aberration to that was Cincinnati. And without Cincinnati, this thing was really tanking. And when you found any one of these teams that were dressed up in the role of a favorite, just snap the rubber band. That's all I can tell you.
Look, the OFN audience getting a look at how the sausage is made behind the scenes.
And really, it makes sense that you bring up Burrow as the one to interrupt that trend, because it takes generational players to do that. So I think it makes sense. This way you can look at a trend like that and go, okay, if somebody's going to do – so do the other teams that we're going to be comparing them to in this particular season, do they have those types of generational talents? And if they don't, then I don't think I'd be worried or concerned.
Well, I don't think the Detroit Lions come close to having generational talent.
No. And Daniel Jones is going to prove this year maybe whether or not there's something in there that people don't think there is, because I think there are some people who believe Daniel Jones could have an MVP season.
The Giants front office does.
There you go.
They paid him enough, right?
Yeah, right. You better.
And the Philadelphia Eagles also fit the bill on my end of that. Giants on Ryan's end, the Eagles on my end. And I think, is there a generational talent on the Eagles? Jalen Hurts stepped up last year. We'll see whether or not he can maintain that pace.
Yep.
That's questionable. And the other thing about the Eagles, which I'm going to put a little bad rap on, is what you know, Ryan. There hasn't been a team that's repeated that division in 19 years. So that black cloud is over the Philadelphia Eagles that way as well this year.
And let's throw in again, not that it happens all the time, didn't happen to the Chiefs, but again, generational talent. And it never happened to Brady and the Patriots, because Brady was a generational talent. Super Bowl losing teams.
On top of it, in 50 years, there's only been one team that lost in the Super Bowl that went back and won the Super Bowl the next year. One team. So you want to bet Philadelphia? I have to look. I have to bring it up in my database to find out who
Probably
it
was.
Yeah, lost the Super Bowl, went back to the Super Bowl, and won it.
Probably the Patriots, I would guess.
And that's what Philadelphia would have to do if you're going to play them to win the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah. Well, I know we're not into the NFC yet, but yeah, I'm not hot on the Eagles this year, and you've named a whole bunch of reasons why, but others we'll get into. Let's wrap up. By the way, did you give a team from the South, Mark? That
I
would it
like
be Houston?
The New Orleans Saints
No,
this
in
year. I like
the AFC South.
in the AFC South.
If something happens to Jacksonville,
Well,
But the,
by default, and only by default, I have Jacksonville in there as the fourth seed, and only because they win the division. But I think they win the division with a mediocre record, is what
so you're not
basically.
sold on Jacksonville.
No, I'm not at all.
Okay. And who's in second in the AFC South for you?
Flip a coin.
Okay. So you're
Yeah,
not as high on say Houston the way Ryan is. You're not
no,
high on any of those teams.
I can
Okay.
see improvement coming from Houston, like Ryan says, and D'Amico Ryans, I think, is going to really bring the best of the talent he's got out on that football
Yeah.
team. It's a little bit too early here, right now, for the Carolina Panthers. Or no, they're over the other conference. I just don't like the division. I really don't, and I'm anti Jacksonville, and I had to put them in the top 7 seeds because the world is on them,
Yeah.
and if I let them go from a value standpoint of the lines at DraftKings here, it's like, you're pissing in the wind here. But there's also another angle here about, I think you know what it might be, Ryan, about how many teams that made the playoffs last year don't make it the following year. I believe it's at least 3 or close to an average of 4.
yeah, I believe that's what it is.
Total or per conference?
I think it's total.
Okay.
We can't do the AFC South and just not mention in passing that there might not be a more exciting player to watch this season than Anthony Richardson. I have no idea.
You mean pro or con? Yeah. Good or bad? Pro or con?
I'm just saying, I have no idea what to expect from him. He could be 400 yards one week, and he could be 4 interceptions the next. I have no idea what to expect from him. I can't remember being this intrigued by a player's highs and lows in a long time.
That's why he was a surprise pick in the draft, going as high as he did, because the team that was all in on him saw those 400 yards and those 4 touchdown passes. The rest of the league saw a lot of inexperience and a quarterback that may or may not be able to read defenses. So we'll see exactly what we've got here in him this particular season.
The history is so against Richardson, and that's unfortunate because, look, we all root for these quarterbacks. The better quarterback play, the better the NFL is. But, I mean, seriously, it's got so caution written all over this situation where you're taking a kid with no experience in college and an erratic experience in college. That combination, and then you're throwing him in as a week 1 starter in the NFL with a rookie head coach and a team that has a struggling, iffy offensive line. I mean, this is, they got Irsay written all over it.
And its best player on phantom injury holdout. So.
Who would take all the pressure off, because that's the intriguing thing about the Colts, is having both Taylor and Richardson in the backfield together. And that could make things real interesting. But, yeah, this could go so wrong.
Yep.
And I think that's true. If it does, there are going to be some people that are going to have to pay for this.
Yeah, then the GM gets fired. Then the new GM doesn't like him. You can just see it coming from a mile away. And the only thing that can prevent it is if he plays really well.
Yeah, well, if he plays well enough. Yeah. I think it would be shocking.
What do you think it is with Taylor, Ryan? You think it's money? All about money?
Oh, it's money, yeah. So it's money. He didn't get what he wanted, what he deserves, to be quite frank. He didn't get it. So he has an injury. And so then they said to him, okay, if you have an injury, then you're going on the PUP list and we're not going to let you play. So now it's like a pissing contest, basically.
A game of chess, huh? Yeah.
It's like, okay, you want to fake an injury? You're on the physically unable to perform with. We're not going to let you play.
Exactly.
But so he had what, a deadline? They put a deadline on whether or not he was going to get traded.
He could have been traded on Tuesday and passed a physical for a new team, but he didn't get traded, so now he's on the physically unable to perform list.
Yeah, it's not good. I can't imagine he's going to be on that deadline's going to go. They're
I
going to
think
find a way
down
to
here,
trade
from
him.
what I read, guys, the Dolphins are still in the hunt for Taylor.
Well, it doesn't matter. He has to miss the first 4 games now anyway. So.
He does, but he can still be traded.
Yeah.
Sure, but now the price just plummeted.
Yes, it did. Exactly.
Yeah, he'll be traded by the deadline, and the Colts won't get what they should. But that's their owner, and that's the way it is in Indianapolis. By the way, Houston's 8-1 to win the division. That's a big number. So Ryan might want to put a few bucks on the Texans.
Who's better? What are the Colts and the
Colts are 6-1. And
get out of here! That's a terrible.
It's right there. You can see it on the screen.
And what are the
Titans are 3-1, 3.5 to 1.
Oh, come on! No way.
There you go.
Who's ever listening who bets, bet and then thank me later.
All right.
Well, remember, there's only 4 teams in the division, so one of those 4 teams is going to win by default.
And one of them is, again, that's what I'm saying. If something happens to one team, Jacksonville,
take the Texans and thank me later.
All right, and then comes the AFC West, and Ryan has been a big Charger dude for a few years. He's sticking with them to make the playoffs again, but he's going with the Chiefs, just like Mark is.
I just do the same thing every year. I don't know why I do it, but I look at the roster and I'm like, they have so many. The reason the 49ers are good is because they have one of the 3 best players at like 7 different positions.
Exactly.
Well, the Chargers have like one of the 5 best players at like 7 different positions. So why are they not? And they have a better quarterback than the 49ers.
It could be coaching.
Why are they not good? I fall in love with the roster every year. Every year they let me down. I didn't pick them last year. I picked them to win the Super Bowl or get to the Super Bowl. This year I have them as my 7th seed.
Well, I think it's all about the coaching with that football team here. Big difference in the coaches, and I didn't put them on my list this year probably because it's been a little futile for me liking the Chargers and not seeing them succeed. But they do have, like you say, Ryan, all the talent in the world to do just that. So if they bust through out of the West, I only had one team out of the West because the other team I was toying with was the Denver Broncos to be a surprise team, largely because of Sean Payton and his track record and how he absolutely brings the best out of players. I think he's got Russell Wilson's attention here this year. There's not a player on the team that liked the guy, probably still don't. But if he can corral him and make him appear to be like Russell Wilson in his early years at Seattle, because really after his first early years, he was never any good there either. But I have Denver as a possible sleeper team in the division.
Well, considering how many games they lost in the closing minutes or in overtime last year, and then you get actual competent quarterback play this year, you get your star running back, even though it would probably take a year for him to be back to being the man, even though he's still a young kid as far as NFL is concerned. And then you throw in the coach. So the problem is it's the AFC. You got to contend with the Chargers and the Chiefs in your division.
The receivers are always hurt. The Broncos receivers are always hurt.
Yep. Again, Judy, it goes on and on.
Patrick.
Yep. And with the Chargers, the reason, I've liked them. I didn't go to your extent, but I think now when you look at them, they get Allen back, even though he's kind of been banged up the last few years. But as of right now, they've got a healthy Allen and Williams, and Palmer's getting up there, and they drafted Quentin Johnson. And then the offensive line is actually looking like it's healthy.
Slater's a good tackle. Lindsey is a good center. Eckler's a top running back. The receiver duo is a top receiver duo. Herbert's phenomenal. Bosa's phenomenal. Derwin James is phenomenal. J.C. Jackson's good. How does this team not win?
Well, maybe the move to bring in Kellen Moore will fix the offense compared to what Staley does or is supposed to do for the defense. Maybe that's a marriage that works.
Asante Samuel Jr. is good. Sebastian Joseph Day is good. I'm just looking at this roster and
Well, one of the problems that I still have with them, and I'm not sure if they fixed it, is that run defense. I still don't know if they've got the right guys. I mean, Kendricks is a step up. He's a solid run defender in the middle. That was good. They needed that. But I mean, I don't like what they necessarily have as starting defensive or even backup defensive tackles. So I don't know if they've fixed the problem of being an adequate run defensive team, because if you can't stop the run, you have, your chances are. And remember, they lost J.C. Jackson last year to begin the season, so he's back. So yeah, I can see this being maybe the year. So we'll see.
So
They're the type of team that if they make it to the AFC Championship game, at that time, it'll be obviously because they're hitting on all cylinders and playing up to their ability. Then people will jump on the bandwagon and say, "Yes, this team did have that potential. They have this potential to be here," and it might well end up being their year this year. But again, I'm not a big Staley guy at all. I just think he's over analytical in his approach to the football games. He doesn't let the players play the game. He makes them play his analytical game, and I think that's what holds the team back.
so this will help us transition to the team we really should be talking about. There's two things I like though there's two things about the Chargers that ring true every year. Number one is they lose games they shouldn't lose. They've been doing it since Marty Schottenheimer and before. And number two is they play the Chiefs tough. They don't usually win the game, but they play the Chiefs tough. If anybody other than the Bengals has figured out how to play the Chiefs, it's the Chargers. They just usually end up losing by 3 points at the end of the game. But the Chargers are a team that will, like, the Raiders aren't beating the Chiefs. The Broncos aren't beating the Chiefs. The Chargers are the one team that could be a thorn in the Chiefs' side in that division. And as we know, the NFL runs through the Chiefs right now.
And Justin Herbert could also be a generational player. He's got the talent and the ability to do just that.
The Chargers roster is better than the Chiefs roster.
There you go.
Hands down, unquestioned, no doubt about it. The coach isn't as good and the quarterback isn't as good.
And that goes a long way, as New England can, as an example, for 2 decades, proved us. And you look at the Chiefs, the thing with the Chiefs is, and again, we talk about it with Super Bowl losers, but the other thing is that, you're going to have a down year once because of injuries, or, hey, maybe Jones and his holdout, because you play so many extra games and you play all these big games, and sooner or later you just have that 1 year. And I'm not saying the Chiefs aren't making the playoffs, and I'm not even saying that they probably won't win the division, even though I think it's possible. But the fact is that, you would think that it's going to catch up to them, and then they're probably just going to, maybe they win 12 games again, 11 games, maybe 13 they could. But I don't know. I'm kind of looking at a 1 or 2 out in the postseason. It just can't go on again. It just can't. They the way they won last year, with really the inexperience at wide receiver and running back, and they barely were able to come back and win those games in the postseason in the Super Bowl. I think they used up all of that they're just not going to be able to use up again this season.
It's very surprising to me that Patrick Mahomes' contract is not, prohibitive. It's like the 12th biggest for a quarterback now, and that their roster is not better than this. Like they're not. We're talking about the Kansas City Chiefs, who could be a dynasty. They're wasting Patrick Mahomes' prime with Kadarius Toney and Marcus Valdez-Scantling is still there, maybe.
Yeah.
And who was the receiver they drafted who had a big touchdown in the Super Bowl?
Juju Smith, you mean?
No, he's Juju Smith's on the Patriots now. They draft Sky Moore there.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, now they got a rookie.
This is the Rashee Rice. Like, this is the receiving core you're putting out there when Mahomes isn't charging you $75 million like he could be. It's very surprising to me. And Chris Jones, it'd be disrespectful to say Chris Jones being not there is not a huge absence. It is.
Oh, it's huge.
He can miss 10 games. Like, it would not surprise me at all if the Chiefs come back to the pack. I think I have them as my 2 seed.
Yeah.
But I will not be surprised that it would surprise me if they don't make the playoffs. It would not surprise me. It would not surprise me if they fall down to like 11-10 wins. Would not surprise me.
I would be surprised if they make it to the Super Bowl. I really do. And the talent's there, obviously, but how many teams have won 3 Super Bowls in a row?
I don't know. Anybody?
One. Right. So, are they that team?
Who is it? The 49ers? Steelers?
Maybe it may have been the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to say the Steelers or the Cowboys. I think it's the Steelers. So are they that type of team? Patrick Mahomes is that type of quarterback. Travis Kelsey is that type of a tight end. But as you just mentioned here, Ryan, here, they're not surrounding him with the best talent that they possibly can. And sometimes winning a Super Bowl, you get a little bit fat and sassy. You win two of them, you get really fat and sassy. And I think they'll be the targeted team this year. I don't think they make it back to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, well, I mean, I remember last year going into the game, people were talking about that if Patrick Mahomes, if they don't win because they lose to Tampa Bay, and they had the first one, they lose to Tampa Bay, they're constantly knocking on the door in the playoffs, and then this was their third Super Bowl appearance. That if they lost, that I mean, you heard you saw what the headlines were last year. That if what is this going to say about Patrick Mahomes if he's not able to win the Super Bowl and he goes 1-2 in the Super Bowl and all this other stuff. Now look, it almost happened, but I think what he proved was what a great player he was, because as you said in the beginning, Ryan, if you take Patrick Mahomes out of this roster and say let's play the season with the Chiefs with their starting quarterback being their number 2 guy right now, Blaine Gabbert, and do you think they win 4 games?
I think, quite simply, of all the great quarterbacks, if you took them away from their team, Mahomes makes the biggest difference on his team.
Well, it might be this year Aaron Rodgers to the Jets, but I think overall, I think that you're correct on that.
I think Zach Wilson would do a better job with the Jets than Blaine Gabbert would do with the current Chiefs roster.
Yeah, Jets have a better roster than the Chiefs. Yeah,
correct.
All right, and overall, so you guys have the Chiefs winning the division. Again, Ryan, you have the Chargers as your second place team and playoff team. There are no other playoff teams for Mark, and I have the Chargers winning the division with the Chiefs.
Wow.
Yeah, I am going for that. I think
Mr. Charger.
Yeah, right. I'm buying in this year on the Chargers. I think they're gonna be able to put it together with the Chiefs making the postseason. So,
yeah.
So as far as our 7, and we'll take a look at your team to win and play in the championship game, Ryan. You have the Bengals, the Chiefs, the Jets, the Jags, the Bills, the Ravens, and the Chargers. And your Super Bowl team from the AFC is going to be Cincinnati beating the New York Jets in AFC championship game.
Who would have had 2 years ago, 3 years ago, a Bengals Jets AFC championship?
Yeah. That's the NFL. That's what we love about it. And Mark has the Chiefs as the 1 seed with the Bills, the Bengals, the Jags, the Dolphins, the Browns, and the Jets. And again, Super Bowl sleeper is going to come out of the AFC, the Browns. And Mark, you have Buffalo beating the Chiefs in the AFC championship game.
I do, for a lot of the reasons that I don't believe Kansas City will be back in the Super Bowl, and I think this could be Josh Allen's year.
And then I have the Bengals, the Chargers, the Bills, the Jags, the Chiefs, the Jets, and the Steelers. Steelers are my Super Bowl sleeper, and I have the Bengals winning the AFC and beating the Buffalo Bills in the championship game. Let's go to the NFC, and we start with the East. So 3 teams last year. Can we get 3 teams again? We just talked a little bit already about the Eagles. So let's finish that up, because I'm just gonna go for it and say that the Eagles don't make the playoffs. Yeah.
What? That is the craziest thing I've heard all summer.
Yeah.
Well, it would have been 2 times crazy, because I had them not making it either, but at the last minute, I slipped them in.
Yeah, you see,
let me do my Home Alone face for you guys.
Yeah, I just think it's. Or we talked about some of the reasons. Here's the other reasons: you lose your both coordinators. You're Super Bowl loser.
The NFC stinks.
And you also take a look at the talent they lost. They lost some really key talent. This is a team that thrives on depth. They lost a lot of that depth. They're still a very talented team, but they're in a division that if they do go third, and in a conference, you would think, okay, they still should be able to get in. And look, of course, I'm not going to be surprised if they get in, but I have a couple of other teams that I'm going to sneak in, and one of them is also going to be the Giants, as I mentioned. But I got a couple of teams I'm going to sneak in over them, and I'm just I just think that something might just go wrong in Philly this year. But other than that, even if they get to the postseason, I just think they lost too much to get back to the Super Bowl, and I'm not going to take them to do that. And matter of fact, I guess the reason that you put your Home Alone face on, Ryan, is because you have the Eagles going back to the Super Bowl.
I do. I went through the whole NFC and I was like, oh, they're not as good as the Eagles. They're not as good as the Eagles. They're not as good as the Eagles. Like I just couldn't see putting anybody else in the Super Bowl. Not making the playoffs to me would be like a Yankees-esque disaster. They are so
Well, there you go. See?
They are so far better than everybody else in the NFC. Like, again, the 7th best team in the AFC might be better than the Eagles. But, like, in the way it's set up, that's just not – it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. You're in the AFC or you're in the NFC. You can't realign. It's like the old NBA where the Western Conference was so much better than the Eastern Conference. And, like, it was like LeBron James's conference every year. That's how it feels with the Eagles. I cannot believe you don't have them in the playoffs. Like, well, I think they could have a bad season and still win the East.
Oh no! I mean, again, yeah. I think what we're doing here is saying, all right, look, if somebody were to tell me the Eagles were going to be one of the most healthiest teams in the league, then I'd probably go, all right, yeah, they'll get to the playoffs at some point this year. Still don't have them winning the division, but the depth is gone, and if they have, and a couple of the guys are older now. Lane Johnson's getting older, so Kelsey's older. If they have a couple of normal injury situations where 2 or 3 key guys go down, that depth is just not there like it was last year. And and then throw in all the other stats we talked about before. A tougher schedule.
As somebody who sees the Giants every day, they have zero depth. I mean, if you're talking about 2 injuries killing the Eagles, 2 injuries will wipe out the Giants. Like, I mean, they have zero depth. So, it'd be hard for me to be like, oh, well, the Eagles could get hurt and get caught by the Giants. Well, the Giants could get hurt and be terrible. Like, if the Eagles get hurt, they're still good.
Well, I think personally, guys, the NFC is as weak as I've ever seen it in memory.
Yeah.
To me, there's not a team that stands out that looks to me to be an automatic team to make it to the Super Bowl. I mean, somebody's going to have to, obviously. And it was, to me, putting it together was like putting a puzzle together, and it was all by default. Going backwards, Philadelphia, because of everything we talked about, and throw in the fact that they play the toughest schedule of any team in the National Football League this year. And that's toughest schedule based on what the projected win totals are for their opponents. And teams that have done that, I've been doing that this way 6 years in the playbook, they're not even a 500 overall record the next year. They had the easiest schedule in the National Football League last year to the Philadelphia Eagles. And what did it get them? It got them to the Super Bowl. So, I'm throwing all that in with being the targeted Super Bowl loser. And the fact that, is there going to be a repeat champion in this NFC East now for the first time in 19 years? Probably not. So that's the reason I have them down a few pegs. I had to put them in to make the playoffs, but I don't see them winning the division here. And if they don't, I've got the New York Giants winning the division by default, if for no other reason.
I'm too close to the Giants. What do you like about the Giants so much that you think they're a division champion caliber team?
Well, and this is sort of a cop-out answer, but it's what I don't like about the rest of the division here, okay? I just think the division is weak. Last year, I believe every team in the division was a 500 team last year. That was, I think it happened for the first time in the National.
I think Washington finished 8-9.
Oh, did they finish 8-9?
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't think they're going to be that much a whole lot better here. But I've got all this anti-Philadelphia stuff going against me here. I've never been a huge Dallas Cowboy fan. I'm not impressed. I don't like Dak Prescott. In fact, I think that Trey Lance will be a starting quarterback for that football team sooner than later. Maybe not this year. Maybe not this year, because the kid needs experience. And the biggest fault that San Francisco had when they reached for him is that he had no experience. He only played one game the year they drafted him. One game, and I think he only played one season before that. And then here comes COVID. He didn't get a chance to play any at all. He's raw, he's green, but he's physically gifted. and I think he's going to end up taking over for Dak Prescott at Dallas, because when the Boo Birds come out and he has to eventually fire Mike McCarthy, other changes are going to happen, and I think that change could end up being Trey Lance. So sort of mediocre to Dallas, cold to Philadelphia for all these reasons I have. I can't go to Washington. I'm not a big Ron Rivera fan at all. I mean, I can't believe the statements that he's making about Sam Howell. He said he didn't realize how good of a quarterback he was. Well, my God, you're his coach. If you don't know, who does know? But now he's going to be a starting quarterback. So it's the Giants by default.
And I tipped my cap. You were right. The Commanders were 8-1.
There we go.
Everybody was over 500, or everybody was 500 or better.
And that was the first time in National Football League history.
Yeah, the reason why I think on the outside perspective from the Giants is that they had no passing game last year, and that's going to improve. Okay, you throw in the kid Hyatt, you signed Campbell, maybe Robinson stays healthy. Slayton, as you know, he's an underrated player. You got Barkley. He's so dynamic.
You're missing the guy who's going to be the biggest playmaker on the team.
Well, and then you've got the big signing of Darren Waller, as long as he stays healthy. That connection with Daniel Jones, and again, taking another step, the coach, the quarterback. So I think there's a lot of optimism there. The defense, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I think defensively there's players, as you know, but they got to get a pass rush going, and that's the thing. Thibodeau has to take the next step. No question. I think if they're a legitimate division winner, and if they have Super Bowl aspirations, Thibodeau has to turn into a star. Now, it could happen, but you tell me, how's Thibodeau looking so far?
Halfway through camp, Wink Martindale called him out, essentially. And if you're ever around, the Giants are the most vanilla training camp ever. So Wink Martindale basically called him out in so many words. And Thibodeau had a very good finish to training camp. He just wasn't making plays in the beginning of training camp. And he maybe got a fire lit under him. He had a very strong finish to camp. Look, the Giants have a good defensive line, maybe very good defensive line, maybe top defensive line in the NFC at least. Linebacker play is suspect. They just made the big trade for Isaiah Simmons. And corners, they're starting 2 rookie corners. I mean, they're going to start Trey Hawkins, a 6th rounder, and Tay Banks, a 1st rounder. Hawkins had the better summer, the lower round pick, and they're moving Adoree Jackson, the veteran, into the slot. So, I mean, how are 2 rookie corners going to hold up on blitz man press coverage? We'll see.
Who is the biggest playmaker in the Giants in your estimation, Ryan? If it's not Saquon Barkley,
it's Darren Waller. I mean, it's Darren. I mean,
Waller?
in my estimation, it's Saquon Barkley. But watching them practice, they're going to throw the ball to Darren Waller like 10 times a game. So, in my estimation, it's still Saquon Barkley. In their estimation, they are moving towards a Darren Waller-centric offense for sure. And then on defense, the biggest playmaker is Dexter Lawrence, no question.
Right.
And Hyatt should really do another thing, and that's important. That's going to stretch the defense, and that's something that the Giants just haven't had.
They are a much faster team than they've been in my 5 years. They have both sides of the ball. They have speed that they did not have in years past.
One thing, they open up with a real tough trek, if you will. 7 of their first 11 games are on the road. They're going to have to come back with those 11 games, at least 5 and 6, I feel.
Their schedule is pretty tough to start the year. So yeah, I'm going with the Cowboys to win the division. We all disagree. Ryan's got Philly, Mark has the Giants, and I have the Cowboys. So yeah, I'm going to the Cowboys, and I know that there's a lot of detractors, but the fact is that Mike McCarthy, say what you want as a playoff coach, but when he has decent talent like this, he can get his teams to the postseason. He can win divisions. He can do that. He's not a terrible coach. Is he a great coach? No. But there's a lot of talent on this Cowboys team. And I'm not a big Prescott guy. But again, it's the regular season we're talking about. And the team is definitely talent-wise, I mean, and defensively too. If you take a look at what they've done a really good job, especially up front. You talk about the Giants' defensive line or the front. Cowboys have a good front as well. And then they got the rookie, Monty Smith, coming in. We know how good Parsons can be. Gilmore, that trade could be big time if Gilmore still is a shutdown guy, which I see no reason to believe he's not going to be. So just what a difference that makes to have to move Diggs as your number 2 corner. That makes a load of help in that secondary and in that defense overall. And then and then you look at the passing game, and I think it was a really shrewd move to pick up Cooks, because Cooks is still a very good player. He's not 35 years old. This guy's still in his 20s. He's just been with like 6 teams, it feels like. But the guy still has moves. He still has speed. Gallup a year back from his injury. Tolbert could be a surprise this year. They expected big things from him last year. I expect better things from him this year. So, yeah, I think the Cowboys are going to make sure that NFC East has a new champion for 19 or 20 straight years, whatever it is.
Sometimes, guys, you hear interviews, and what you hear in the interview completely changes your perception of that player or that coach. And I had heard Mike McCarthy being interviewed maybe 3 or 4 years ago on NFL radio, and far from the sharpest knife in the drawer. I mean, completely. I was like, oh my God, this guy is a head coach. And, he comes to Dallas because of the success that he had at Green Bay. Well, that was all Brett Favre's success. And maybe much like Bill Belichick, a lot of that was Tom Brady's success. And he's finding out that he doesn't have a Brett Favre or a Tom Brady. He's got a Dak Prescott here. And that's why the Dallas Cowboys struggle.
What year is it McCarthy in? Year what? 3 or 4?
For the Cowboys? 4.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I remember, wasn't there a lot of talk when the Jets were looking for a coach?
The Jets and the Giants. He interviewed with both of them.
I remember the Jet fans. There was some fraction of Jet fans that wanted McCarthy bad.
Some Giants fans wanted him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is year 4 for him. He was there 3 years. The first year he won 6 games, and they come back and played a lot better the last 2 years. But I think they're going to go closer to 6 than they are 13.
And I'll give you before we move on, guys. I'll give you a stat. Last 25 total games against the Eagles and Cowboys. 25 total games. I don't know, 13 one, 12 the other. 25 total games against the Eagles and Cowboys. How many have the Giants won?
Oh, 5?
1.
3.
Oh, we got it right in between.
They're 3-22 against their 2 biggest rivals.
Yeah, well, for the Jets and the Giants, it has to change if either of those teams plan on being difference makers this year. That's for sure.
They made the playoffs last year going 0-5-1 1-4-1 in the division.
There you go. So, by the way, if Washington does not get off to a good start before the trade deadline, maybe keep an eye on Chase Young. That could be a good. There are going to be some trades before the deadline this year. It's another thing that's happening more and more often in the NFL. All right, so move on to the North, and I just can't imagine how it is to feel if you're a Detroit Lion fan with Aaron Rodgers gone, with the way things went to end their season. Fans and media experts were already going to put them as a playoff team. Now with Rodgers gone, everybody is on the Lions. And I kind of know how that feels as a Jet fan, the way that everybody's talking about the Jets. The Jets have not been in the postseason in 13 years, 12 years, NFL. Nobody's done that but the Jets. I don't feel comfortable with that. And Lion fans are like, okay, I got to imagine. They're like, oh, this is going to be fun. But, I mean, slow your roll, man. We haven't been to the postseason in a while. But still, it's a great story. They deserve it. And it starts from the top down. Management has done a great job building this organization the last several years. It's something they have not had, stability in upper management, and you knew that eventually it was going to work. Now it is. So I don't think there's any question in my mind that they are the team to beat. But, Mark, you are not sold.
I'm anti-Detroit this year, guys. They took that quantum leap last year, and the whole world's in on them. And I just see so many teams go back to where they came from in doing that. This is a division, guys, where it was the toughest for me picking a division winner because I'm anti-Detroit. I'm definitely anti-Minnesota I don't like what they did last year. They won 13 games and they allowed 31 yards a game more than they allowed. Come on. That stuff catches up with you real quick. The Chicago Bears, who knows if ever Fields is going to end up being a quality National Football League quarterback. I think Eberflus was a good hire for the program, but they need some offensive starch, that football team does. By default, I'm on the Green Bay Packers. If for no other reason here, I think Jordan Love is going to have a breakout year, much like Aaron Rodgers did when Brett Favre left that football program. So, again, I think it's a real weak division. Put me down for Green Bay by default.
That is a very, very gutsy pick. I mean, I
Yes.
don't know that I've heard anybody pick Green Bay. But I agree with you. Of all the first-year starting quarterbacks, I don't whatever, however you would quantify unproven young quarterbacks, I think I'm highest on Love. I think.
I see that parallel, Ryan. The same parallel that Aaron Rodgers waited and waited and waited and
Yeah,
waited for.
I mean there's something to be said, as you know, for those are Aaron Rodgers is an exceptional talent. It's
Yes, he is.
you could wait 3 years, and if you're you can wait 3 years, and if you're Jamarcus Russell, you're still gonna suck.
Yeah.
So it's not so, but I like what I like what I've heard and what I've seen in a little bit, but also mostly what I've heard behind the scenes about on and off the field with Love.
Yeah, he's got the physical stature too, and the strong arm. I just think it all comes together for him this football season here. I like that he got some. They used him in the preseason here, and he did look pretty good in the preseason as well.
This was one of the teams, by the way, that I put in over Philadelphia, the Packers. So I believe in the Packers too. Here's an interesting thing: is to take a look at the odds. Packers are futures-wise the fourth team in the NFC North, which I'm shocked that the Bears are ahead of the Packers. The Bears have no defense.
People like the Bears.
I mean, I can see the offense. I like Fields. I think they're headed in the right direction offensively, but they got no defense. I don't get it. I mean, the Packers have a much more talented football team. They are just giving them no respect because Rodgers is gone. That's what it is. Rodgers is gone. They didn't make the postseason last year, so how are they going to make it this year without him? That's, I think, how people are looking at the Packers.
I think you're right.
But they're a lot better than that. The team that shouldn't be up there should be the Vikings. I could easily see the Vikings in fourth place this year, easily. So, but again, I have Detroit and Green Bay. Mark, you have Green Bay, and Ryan, you have Detroit. So, how sold are you on Detroit, Ryan?
Me, I just almost like Mark said. I didn't like any of the other teams, so I picked Detroit. I think they have a lot of talent. I like their coach. I think they like their coach. I think Jared Goff gets a bad reputation. He's a better quarterback than people think he is. I love the offensive line. They have playmakers. Jahmyr Gibbs will be a fantasy superstar. He'll have 75 catches out of the backfield.
And they have Montgomery as the number 2.
Yeah. And then at some point, Jameson Williams will come back from his gambling suspension. I like him. I like him. I like him more because I don't like anybody else in the division. How sold am I on them? I think they win the division, and I don't think they win a playoff game. So that's how sold I am on them.
Well, I think they're going to – look, I think, tell you the truth, I know it's only 1 week, but I think week 1's going to tell us a lot about the stage after the way they ended the season, all the hype. How do they handle that? How do they look? Are they for real? And I love the draft picks they made to bring in Jack Campbell. I mean, what a perfect pick with this coach. I mean, and they needed a middle linebacker. And then Branch to get him in the second round, and that they have revamped that secondary. I mean, that secondary is completely different from what we've seen over the last couple of years. And Hutchinson was just a stud last year as a rookie, and there's no reason to believe that he ain't going to get even better than that. So, yeah, I think they're for real. I would have put them as a wild card team if, say, Rodgers was still there. But the rest of the division, not so much. By the way, go ahead, Mark.
I say, let me share this with you guys here. Something interesting that I came across, and a little bit more from a former general manager come up with this stat about Justin Fields, and he compared him to Davis Mills. Have you seen or heard what I'm going to talk about here, Ryan?
No.
Davis Mills?
Yes.
Okay. Well, this can't be good.
Well, it can't be good for Justin Fields.
No.
Okay. Okay. By comparison, in their career, they both made 25 starts.
Oh, boy. We're getting into stats. Okay.
Justin Fields thrown for 4,112 yards. Mills threw for 57, 82, 24 touchdowns, 21 interceptions for Fields, 33 touchdowns, 25 interceptions for Mills. And you talk about a 63.3% completion record and 63 sacks. All of a sudden, it doesn't look like Justin Fields is going. Davis Mills lost his job, and Justin Fields is being put up higher on a pedestal here this football season. Here, he's got to prove it. I know they picked up DJ Moore, and he should be a cog for him, but he's got to learn how to throw the football. He's looking more and more to me like Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, there's all those stats are selling short his running ability.
Yeah. That's
he
the
needs
trick.
he needs. I'm actually surprised they didn't hire who's the Ravens fired Greg Roman.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I'm actually surprised they didn't hire Greg Roman.
Yeah.
Like even as a consultant, that's what he needs, an offense built for his skill set, and I think he'll be fine.
And by the way,
if you try to jam a round peg in a square hole, like you just said, he's going to be Davis Mills.
And comparing it to Lamar Jackson, that's fine. I mean, if that's his ceiling, that's fine. He doesn't have to be. He doesn't have to be Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady. No. He can be Lamar Jackson, and that's fine.
He could be on the field. He could be Michael Vick, and you're happy.
And you're happy. Yes.
Yeah.
By the way, that was those stats I just gave you were from Mike Lombardi. Used to be a general manager, and now he works for Beeson a lot. So he tried to come up with some gambling stats for them. So more or less, that's what they were shared for.
By the way, before we move on to the South, I should note, because I skipped over it, talked about Houston at 8-1 in the South. The Giants are 9-1 in the East. 9-1 to win the division. I think that's as good as the Houston pick we just talked about.
Because Philadelphia and Dallas reside in that neighborhood. That's why.
All right, the South.
Guys, just so we got to speed this up a little bit. I probably got 15 minutes before I got to pick up my kids. So.
Okay.
Cool.
So the South, we shouldn't need much time on. But because taking a quick look at it, no surprise. One team for Ryan. Big surprise. Two teams for Mark. One team for me. And we all have different teams, except here's the interesting thing. We have picked all four teams for specific reasons. Mark picked the Saints to win the division, and Atlanta will make the playoffs as a playoff sleeper. Ryan has New Orleans to win the division and has them as a sleeper to win the Super Bowl, and has Carolina as a sleeper to make the playoffs. I, with my only pick, has Tampa Bay winning the division. So we have everything cornered here.
But we do need some time on this out here.
By the way,
my kids might be stuck at school.
Tampa Bay's 10-1 to win the South, which in this division is nuts because this is not. I mean, come on, what are you going to have 9 wins to win this division? So, all right, let's get on. Let's talk about those two teams in there, Ryan, the Saints and Carolina.
I picked the best quarterback to win the division. That's what I did. It's really that simple. I don't like any of the teams. I don't think they're any good. I picked the best quarterback to win the division, Derek Carr. They have some talent. It's aging. I mean, I don't know what you can get out of Kamara. I don't know what Michael Thomas is anymore. The last time Michael Thomas played, he was the best receiver in the NFL. He hasn't played in 2 years. They have some aging talent. I picked the best team. I picked the team with the best quarterback to win the division. And then why did I pick them as a sleeper? Because I looked at anybody. So our rule was what? 30, anybody 30-1.
You got the Saints at 30-1. Yep.
So I ruled out anybody in the AFC because I don't think anybody can win the Super Bowl in the AFC except the 3 or 4 best teams. Anybody else, sorry, not happening. AFC is too good. NFC is wide open. You could get one of those years where a team comes from nowhere in the NFC. Like I said, it's the Eagles or bust. Eagles guy gets hurt. Jalen Hurts is hurt. Anything could happen in the NFC. So I picked the team that I'm giving the home. I picked the team from the South who's going to have a home playoff game, who's definitely going to be in it. I made my sleeper team to win the Super Bowl. Got to be in it to win it, so I made it the Saints.
I like it. You have that reunion, if you will, between Dennis Allen and Carr in New Orleans. really nice defense for that football team in a very, very soft division. Again, I think they just float to the top of that division. I have Atlanta as the number 7 seed making the playoffs here. They're one of the wise guy teams in Vegas. When I say wise guy team, their over under total win total was set at 9.5 this year. Really rather high for a team that hadn't played really good football. But what they do is they take on the easiest schedule in the league this year, and easiest by that measurement of opponents' projected win-loss records. And I'll say this: the easiest team last year was the Philadelphia Eagles, had the easiest schedule, and you see what they did. And the numbers behind the teams with the easiest schedule are like through the roof. So hence, I have to put Atlanta. I have to make mention of Atlanta, if for no other reason, because of that schedule.
Be very interesting if Arthur Smith could get fired, or if he turns Desmond Ridder into Jalen Hurts, or even a Jalen Hurts light. Then we'll be talking about him as the coach of the year.
Well, might it not be? Who's the other quarterback on the team? Is it Heineke?
Yep.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Heineke ends up getting more play than Ridder does, but we'll see. That'll be up to Arthur Smith.
Yeah, teams that flip-flop quarterbacks are not going to be teams I pick in the playoffs.
I get you exactly.
But they are going to run the football, that's for sure, and they're going to run it successfully. So they don't need the quarterback to do a whole lot. Just don't screw it up. That's Ridder, and maybe Heineke. And the other thing, too, is remember that if neither one of those guys, especially Ridder, if he doesn't have a big season, Atlanta is going to be one of those teams that is going to be all in on mortgaging all sorts of collateral to get one of those top quarterbacks in next year's draft. Quickly, Carolina, why you have them as a playoff sleeper, Ryan?
Much the same reason I have the Saints as my sleeper. I think that the South is a place to go for a sleeper because the division's so wide open that any of the teams could be the Saints could win the division and then they're the playoff sleeper. So I think I had them as my second best team in that division. I think I did go Saints, Panthers, Falcons, Bucks. So the Panthers to me are the second best team in that division. They could Bryce Young. We don't know what he's going to be, but we know that rookie quarterbacks have more success now than they used to. And I think it's a good roster around him. I think they've built a pretty good roster around him. The head coach we know has had success in this league. I like a lot of what Carolina is doing. Put it this way. I will pick Carolina without knowing what teams are going to look like next year, barring some big NFL landscape. Carolina will be my pick to win the NFC South, probably 24 and 25. I just think they're 1 year away.
Again, that's what if Atlanta ends up with the top quarterback?
Like I said, barring some big NFL landscapes, I wouldn't have told you Aaron Rodgers was going to be on the Jets this year.
No, but I don't think that's far-fetched because they have the draft collateral to make that move.
I think Carolina's the team going forward.
But right now,
it's a year early.
Bryce Young is, I think he's the real deal. So
a little more whipped cream to Atlanta guys. Bijan Robinson, the running back, is the odds-on favorite to win the Rookie of the Year this year.
It's not bad.
You get struggling quarterbacks there. I think they're going to make him a focal point of that attack.
I could see them as a 2,000-yard. I could see both guys getting a lot of yardage in that backfield.
It makes my brain hurt. So running backs don't matter. We can't pay them. Running backs don't matter. Oh wait, he's gonna win the rookie. He's gonna win the rookie. He's gonna win the Rookie of the Year, right?
How does that not matter?
Oh wait, the Colts. If they only had Jonathan Taylor, they might be good. But running backs don't matter. It's such a contradiction. It's like the NFL. We can't extend them, but we can use top 10 picks on them. What are we doing? The NFL just can't get this right. I'm the only one fighting for. It's like sometimes I feel like I'm the only one who can see what's right in front of me. Everybody just recycles that running backs don't matter, and then when you actually watch the games, they matter a lot.
Yes, they do.
I think what happens is the more Jalen Warrens come around, the more these GMs with the salary cap age go, I can get a running back. I don't even have to draft a running back. And he can do just as much or not better than the guy I used a first-round draft pick on the Steelers, the Kid Harris. Those are the examples that some of these GMs deal with and why they think that they don't need to spend big on running backs.
Okay. Well, we'll see.
I don't agree with it, but
It's
that's
such a copycat league, and it's like
it's a
whatever's being
fad.
told.
It's a fad. Yeah.
Yep. And this is what's
And then
being told right
quickly,
now.
the reason I'm going with Tampa is because, yes, you throw Tom Brady out and you put Baker Mayfield. I get it, but the roster is not bad. I don't understand. They make it look like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have a terrible roster, and they don't. There's still a lot of players that won Super Bowls on that roster, and their offense is still loaded with weapons. So if they can just remember, Mayfield was not good when he was injured. He looked a lot better last year with the Rams when he was healthy, and if he's looking healthy so far. So if he can have a healthy season in this division, I think they could be a lot better than people think. So that's why I went ahead and rolled the dice on a team from the bad NFC South. Let's wrap it up with the West.
Hold on, I gotta say this: if Todd Bowles can turn Tom
Yeah.
Brady into a 9-8 quarterback, he can turn Baker Mayfield into a 2-14 quarterback.
That's the worry, no question.
Hey, but let me throw this out also before you hop out real quick, because I know we're getting up against the window for time. I found that stat about the teams that have the softest schedule in the National Football League. In the 6 years I've been doing this, the past 6 years, the teams that had the easiest schedule have gone 65-28 overall. That is the Atlanta Falcons this year.
Okay.
All right. And then wrapping up in the West, we all have San Francisco winning the division. Ryan, you have Seattle making the postseason. Mark has no other West teams making it. And I have Seattle making the postseason. So, again, that's the reason I have Seattle and Green Bay in. Those are the two teams I think will make it. Seattle made it last year. I just think they're going to be better. And then also San Francisco. I mean, how can you go wrong? The management, the coach. Now, apparently, they've got a quarterback that, again, I mean, wow, here we go. I mean, how often? I mean, things are changing now, Ryan, it seems like, where you can start drafting quarterbacks now outside the first round, and they have some sort of
so why
success.
pay them, right? So let's treat them like running backs.
Treat them
That's
like
right,
running
throw them in the
backs.
hopper.
That's it.
Just get Brock Purdy in the last pick of the draft. Why am I paying Joe Burrow?
They used up a top 5 pick on Trey Lance. 2 years later, trade him.
Yeah,
And
so
the 7th round draft
you
pick.
can get them anywhere. Desmond Ridder, get them anywhere. So this is the easiest division to me in terms of you could pick the first place team and pick the last place team. So everybody thinks it's the 49ers. They're loaded. Lynch and Shanahan would both be fired if they didn't pick Brock Purdy. If everything they've done right, they got the Trey Lance thing so wrong, they would both have been fired.
Yeah.
But they lucked into Purdy, or maybe they didn't. Maybe they skilled themselves into Purdy.
Not really.
And so now they're set up. They can keep all their stars because they have a cheap quarterback. They hit an accidental home run. And so they're far and away the best team. The Cardinals are trying to go 0-17. Jonathan Gannon better be careful because you tank, and then all of a sudden you're not the one who's the beneficiary of tanking. They'll be lucky to win 2 games, and then second and third place. I guess you flip a coin. The Matthew Stafford can't relate to young players thing is a little bit scary. That his wife said on her podcast that he's having a hard time relating to the young players. That's a little bit scary. So
but that roster has got trouble. So
yeah, Seahawks I think are just a solid, steady. I wouldn't pick them if the NFC was any good. It's not. So they're just a solid, steady. There'll be a team that makes the playoffs and you forget they were in it 2 weeks later.
Well, they check swing, like you say, a check swing to a home run with the Brock Purdy situation here. The nice thing about him is what he showed last year is the ability to lead this football team. I think this team has so much immense talent, it can't help but win. McCaffrey's got the potential to be a league MVP if he can stay healthy for one.
But he's a running back.
We'll
they
pay
don't
him.
matter.
We'll pay. Well, let's call him a dual threat, okay? Because he can catch the ball out of the backfield. Debo Samuels, my goodness. The thing I've learned the most in my handicapping years is the teams that make it to the Super Bowl are the teams that control the game at the line of scrimmage and outrush the opponents. The more attempts you have rushing than your opponent, you're more likely to win the football game.
But we don't need running backs.
By the way, that is the thing, though, that has to be concerning for San Francisco, even though apparently it's not concerning to John Lynch, and that is how they've McGlinchey replacing him right now is a big question mark in McKivitz. And not that Matt Pryor's any better as the backup. That's a team that might make a trade before the deadline if those guys don't look the deal, because that means George Kittle has to stay in and block. and then you take him out of the passing game, and everything changes. So the offensive line, I mean, if you were to take Trent Williams out of that offensive line, it could be a disaster. Yeah. As much as they rely on the offensive line. So we'll see, but that's why injuries.
They have room for error in that division. So.
Okay, and then again, just taking a look at the final predictions. Ryan, you're going to have the Bengals against the Eagles. The Bengals beating the Jets. The Eagles beating the Niners.
Do you want to run through the 7 NFCs?
Yeah, we'll do Ryan's Eagles, 49ers, Lions, Saints, Giants, Cowboys, and Seahawks. And again, his sleeper Super Bowl pick is the Saints. His sleeper playoff team, the Panthers. Eagles over the 49ers. Mark has 49ers, Giants, Saints, Packers, Eagles, Cowboys, and Falcons. Falcons playoff sleeper at 60-1. And San Francisco over the Eagles in the championship game. I have the Niners, the Cowboys, the Lions, the Bucks, the Giants, the Seahawks, and the Packers. Tampa Bay, of course, my playoff sleeper at 100-1. And I have San Francisco beating the Dallas Cowboys in the NFC Championship game. And I have Cincinnati beating San Francisco in the Super Bowl. Mark has Buffalo beating San Francisco in the Super Bowl. And Ryan has Cincinnati beating Philadelphia in the Super Bowl. So there you go. Two Super Bowl losses in a row for the Eagles. That would be painful. And Buffalo winning one would not be painful. That would be joyous. That would be something else. NFL would be pretty, people in Buffalo would be pretty stoked. All right, so that's going to wrap it up. I'm sure we're going to do this again at some point. If we don't talk during the regular season, we will definitely talk to preview the playoffs because these guys are going to be busy all season. Ryan, I'm sure I'll talk to you to talk a little Giant and Jet football during the season for sure. And Mark, we'll be talking college football later today. We'll preview the college football season. And, of course, you and I will have a weekly show as usual. And you've got the Playbook Experts YouTube channel as well with your show that was just posted earlier today, just a couple hours ago when we came on the air. Your first show with Victor, Andy, and Jim Feist.
I got to say before we go here, Ryan, I love reading your stuff. It's an absolute great read. And I'm not talking from a gambling standpoint. I'm talking from a football fan standpoint. So anything that I come across, you got a big splash. I don't know, was it about a month ago? You got was it correct? The New York Post?
Yeah. The Post has, I was all over the Saquon Barkley stuff. So,
okay.
Yeah, so I had a good month. With the Saquon Barkley contract. I appreciate the kind words, guys. Love all you guys do for your content, and I check it out as much as possible. I recommend it. Anybody who's listening here for the first time, I recommend both these guys to you as experts in areas where I am not an expert. I am a practice and games guy. These guys take you the rest of the way.
All right.
Now, I'm going to send you those stats on the win twice as many games in 1 year here. As soon as we're done, I'll email it to you. Okay.
Appreciate you guys. Take care.
Have a great season. Be good, Ryan. Bye-bye.
Thanks.